Welcome to the Partnerships in Clinical Trials Latin America podcast series. Partnerships in Clinical Trials Latin America will be taking place August 1st to the 3rd, 2011 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Today we have Eduardo Motti, Regional Head of Clinical Operations of South Latin America of PFIZER, who will be acting as a chairperson of the upcoming meeting as well as participating in a leadership panel discussion on how to accelerate innovation in Brazil. Welcome to the show, Eduardo.
Thank you very much.
So just wanted to start off, one of the biggest challenges that we hear pharmaceutical executives facing in working in Latin America. It's well known that one of the deterrents for conducting clinical research and clinical trials in Latin America are the long regulatory timelines. Can you give us an overview of what the regulatory landscape currently looks like in Brazil?
Yes, I think it's important to have a perspective of what has happened in Brazil in the last years. Our regulations for clinical research started in 1996, the same year of the ICH GCP, and our regulatory agency was created in 1999. And since then, there were very positive changes in terms of creating ethics committees and a national body that regulates the ethics committee that we call CONEP, that is the National Ethics Committee in Research. And those bodies were very efficient in terms of creating a background, training people for reviewing clinical protocols and etc. But now I think that they are victims of their own success, and because of the number of the studies that we have now, they don't have the necessary manpower and infrastructure to cope with this volume of work. So right now we have quite a complicated system, very efficient, but in terms of protecting the research subject, but also taking a long time to approve the studies. That's some place to grow in the next future.
Are you seeing the ethic committees build up their infrastructure or try to grow in order to address that problem? You mentioned they're victims of their own success. Are they doing anything to change that?
Yes, they are doing a lot of things and they are working hard. As you know, everything that depends on the government is a little bit slower than with the private companies, but they are really struggling to cope with the high volume of work that they have.
Do you think that high volume of work and complex regulatory landscape is preventing Brazil to some extent from its ability to do innovative drug development?
Oh yes, unfortunately it is. Right now we do not participate in 30 to 40% of the studies that are initially offered to Brazil because of the timelines. And that also prevents a number of sites to be developed and to have more sites and more studies in Brazil.
Are there any initiatives that you're aware of in the industry to build up the site networks and the clinical research sites available in Brazil at this time?
Yes, there's some networks of sites that are being formed in Brazil, and I think that the event that we are going to have in August is also an important initiative in terms of putting the sites together and exchanging information and best practices. And that will be very helpful to develop new sites.
Eduardo is referring to our site management full-day symposium that we're going to be featuring on the first day of the conference. Obviously, successful clinical trials rely on a variety of factors, and site management and performance are an integral piece of the puzzle. So what we'll be doing is we'll be bringing in 9 different faculty leaders to interact with site professionals and sponsors as well as CROs and explore topics including global trial identification and selection, clinical trial feasibility, negotiation strategies with sponsors and CROs, clinical study startup, metrics to improve site performance, risk management techniques, and to minimize financial risk and ensure regulatory compliance, how to improve data management and more. So that's what Eduardo is referring to. How are you seeing Brazil's regulatory timelines compare to others in Latin America?
Right now, it takes around 8 to 9 months to approve a new study in Brazil, and that's at least 2 to 3 months more than in other countries from Latin America.
And how does it compare to other regions of the world, to Asia and to Europe?
In terms of Asia, I think that China is a place where the studies also take a long time to be approved, and that's always the example that we use in Brazil to say that we do not delay that much. But in terms of Europe and the U.S., we are far behind. So we are at least 4 to 6 months behind.
So regulatory timelines are a little bit longer in Brazil than in other parts of the world and in Latin America. But what are some of the advantages of working in Brazil, opportunities that maybe other people in the industry aren't aware of?
Yeah, I think that's very important because Well, we do not have this volume of work out of nothing. So there's a lot of good sides, and recruitment and retention of patients is very good, very positive. And also the way that sites work, flexibility and the interaction with people, it's very, very positive. So I think that the companies that overcome these initial issues, they do have good results.
Are you seeing any collaboration currently underway between different regulatory agencies within Latin America to help improve regulatory timelines?
Right now, the collaboration between regulatory agencies are restricted to the issues of registration of new products. They have not achieved the level of clinical research, so we do not foresee significant changes in the next years in terms of collaborating one agency to the other or having a harmonization of requirements between the agencies, unfortunately.
So standardization in regulatory procedures is still a little farther away.
It is. Unfortunately, that's true.
So what can a sponsor company proactively do in order to achieve better regulatory timelines and work with regulatory agencies when conducting clinical trials in Brazil?
I think that the most important topic is to develop local expertise and establishing a direct contact with the regulators, understanding profoundly what the regulations are and what the meaning of them are. So what the regulators want with this type of requirement, it's not only bureaucracy, but there's something that they want to protect, that is the research subject in this. So developing local expertise is the most important issue here.
And in terms of partnerships, are you seeing global pharmaceutical companies such as Pfizer expand their offices locally, or how are you seeing global pharmaceutical companies develop more local expertise?
Well, right now, I think there's a strong competitiveness between the regions. As you know, global research is a global enterprise, and Latin America now competes with Asia, Eastern Europe, and other regions to have more studies. So pharmaceutical companies are investing heavily in developing this local expertise, and CRO as well. So that's very important to create a critical mass to bring more studies to the area.
Do you have any tips for people from biotech, pharma, medical device companies, or CROs who've never worked in the region but are looking to do clinical research in Latin America?
I think one important question is to come with an open mind. Sometimes, especially American companies that are very heavily influenced by the way the FDA and the regulatory environment is in the U.S., they go to other regions and say, that's the way we operate in the U.S., or that's the way it should be. And that doesn't work in Latin America. So coming with an open mind and understanding the regulations and complying with them will bring very interesting results for those companies.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Eduardo. For more information on Eduardo's presentation and the rest of the Partnerships in Clinical Trials Latin America agenda, please visit our webpage at www.pctla.com. We hope you'll be able to join us in Sao Paulo, Brazil, August 1st through 3rd, 2011, for our second annual Partnerships in Clinical Trials Latin America. Goodbye.